So in my world, so I'm the futurist for a big movie studio, 20th Century Fox, and I'm also, they call me the chief creative officer for a big technology company called Barco. So I actually, in the future, everyone has multiple jobs, so I have multiple jobs. One of the things we've been working on is an immersive cinema project that people often refer to as bricks and mortar VR, because the cinema experience is not just in front of you, it's all around you. It's a 180-degree wraparound experience that we're shooting movies and creating movies specially for. So there were, last week at CinemaCon, the big cinema convention, we had a bunch of announcements related to that. And it's pretty exciting. So one of them is that J.J. Abrams' project and Justin Lin directing the new Star Trek Beyond, sections of that will be in the immersive Barco Escape format. So that's a big step forward. We also have the director of Need for Speed and Active Valor, a guy named Scott Waugh, making a movie end-to-end in the entire format that he's shooting right now called Six Below. So that's pretty exciting. And then Fundamental Films is working on a project with us. Cross Creek is working on a project with us. So there's stuff happening. We're installing theaters all around the world. So this is in a physical space, in an actual, let's go to the movies, but let's go to a modern version of the movies. And the whole idea is to compel people in different ways to get out of the house, to actually make the trip and let's go to the movie experience, but a different movie experience than they're used to seeing. It's a big change. And my life these days in all kinds of ways is about big change and what does that mean to the world. So it's quite fun. Yeah, it's an interesting question in terms of the socialization of different types of spaces. We see a movie theater as still a very comfortable place for a lot of people to go. They want to feel the group experience. And interestingly enough, when the movie's around you and you get to sort of do this, it's actually more of a social experience because you're kind of aware of everybody around you enjoying it, and that is a positive thing. In terms of the VR side of things, there are already a number of simulation theaters on the Gear VR and the Oculus and the Vive that all work really well, and they're starting to show touch points onto what does virtual socialization mean. I want to bring a group of friends, their avatars, into a virtual experience and sit with them in a cinema. So luckily in my side of the equation, I actually get to play both sides and figure out a bunch of different ways, because there's no right or wrong answer to truthfully anything I do or anything I've done for as long as I can remember. It's just different areas to explore. And not knowing the answer while you're on the journey is actually the joy of the journey, is that there's all kinds of unexpected consequences. I mean, the stuff that we did, with Fox on the Wild piece a couple years ago, and then The Martian this past year, we ended up in a very different place than when we started in terms of what we were targeting and what we went to really create from an ambition standpoint. And it ended up being almost a 30-minute experience in VR, where you're in all these different interactive experiences, very intense, some of them. You are playing the part of Mark Watney, the astronaut in The Martian, and it's a first-person experience that sort of brings you into the world of, I actually got to go to Mars and do all the things that he did in the movie, and it's been a big sort of breakout hit already in pre-release mode. It hasn't even been released yet to the headsets that are on the market, just starting, and that's all staging right now, and they're preparing the launch date and everything for the Oculus and the Vive and the Sony PlayStation VR. But it is in and of itself building it a journey and a fascinating way to approach learning a new skill of how do you tell a story in a new way with a new device. So we're pretty excited about it. So virtual reality, as we've come to call it in all of its forms, it gives you a more intense experience. It's to me one of the biggest change agents in the media and entertainment landscape of many generations, because no matter what we've been doing for the past 100 years, it's still relatively the same thing. We are looking at a screen-type device that has a separation point to us, and we sit a ways from it, and we get our storytelling that way. Now, of course, we have mobile devices, and we can take it, and it's tiny, and we can take it with us, and they have giant home televisions and home theaters and stuff like that. But the idea of where the break point is, both in the cinema, what we're doing with this all-around you wraparound cinema, which is sort of like theme parking every cinema in the world. It's literally making every cinema into like a theme park experience. So you've got to go see it there. You can't see this at home. And then taking that one step further into VR, where you break the connection of there's still a separation point, and even in its best environments, you still know it's not really happening to you. In what we call virtual reality, which should maybe mostly be called virtual fantasy or virtual peril or virtual adventure or virtual anything except reality, because that's what entertainment typically is a way to crack those barriers, to sort of break everything down and make you believe it's actually happening to you. So the emotions, the visceral sense of it is at a whole different level, which is what excites me and all the people that I'm working with very closely about it, is it's a new way to approach storytelling. It's a new way to approach creation of emotions and desire and feeling, and it's just fundamentally different than anything that's ever come before it. I think you're touching on both things that are completely correct. We are going to become practitioners of the new medium and audiences in the new medium, and we're going to build our sophistication level. Based on what I do for a living, I've become an early practitioner, right? So I spend a good amount of time in these virtual reality and now both virtual and augmented reality headsets at all different levels, because it's what I do for my work, for my career. What was interesting to me, spending time doing some talks here and some panels here and speeches here at NAB, over and over again, I ask how many people have experienced X, Y, and Z, and very few people have. So here are people coming and making a trip a long way to experience and learn about this new medium. They haven't even had a chance to start their practice. Like, they're not even on the practice field yet. I'm just getting onto the practice field, and I've been doing it for 2 years. Almost every day I have a VR headset, and now a lot of times AR type stuff in my world as well. So you start to build your understanding of it. You start to build your comfort zone. You start to build a believability structure and a learning structure about what is going to really matter about this. So insanely powerful entertainment is going to matter. Documentaries, I think, are going to matter. Sporting events are going to matter. There's a lot of things that are going to matter, and a lot of the tools and the craftsmanship are just being created for this kind of rebirth of this new medium. Virtual reality has actually been around since the early 90s in its earlier kind of beginning form of trying to commercialize it and make it something that could be used in the real world, but just there weren't enough pieces that could connect it. And now you have massively powerful technology that is quite ubiquitous, and people can have it at the highest levels with tethered systems that are just a couple $1,000s all in, which people might say, oh, that's a lot of money, but it's really not. For what you're doing in these worlds, it's incredible. And really no different than any sort of first level consumer product delivery that typically starts out at a couple of grand and then goes under 1,000 and then goes under 500, and eventually it'll be a couple $100. That's for the highest end of the experience. And then for the more ubiquitous experience, the mobile experiences are also extremely good. So the Samsung Gear VR is a good one to point out, and what Google Cardboard is doing with their world, and they keep advancing and getting better and better at what they're doing. But that first taste of looking around and seeing that I'm not restricted, I'm no longer in this rectangle or this square, I can break out of it. It means that new storytelling and new craftsmanship has to happen, and it's happening fast. And we're okay with making a lot of mistakes along the way, because that's how you learn. And where we're seeing is we're starting to see the seeds of the best creators and the ones that are really starting to figure it out. And that's who we're working with at 20th Century Fox, and it's good times. It's interesting. No, I think we're there. I think the computing power that exists today, the headsets that exist today, although they are still in their earliest stages of technological wonderment, are powerful enough to achieve the initial objective. But we're at an early stage, and we're going to continue to get better and better over time. But this is a good opportunity for those that want to be in something new to dive in now, to start to learn, to start to become a practitioner, to start actually building and crafting and seeing what works and what doesn't work, or what works remarkably well that they didn't think was going to work, or how to figure out all the problems of a new way to tell stories. It's a good time for that. It's a good time for people that come to a show like NAB to understand that there is always something around the next corner. And all you have to do is go back and look at history. I don't have to point out every single one. Everybody that knows this and has been around long enough in the media sphere and the media space totally understands how this change happens. And it continues to happen over and over and over again. Sometimes they're incremental changes, sometimes they're medium changes. This one, because of the fundamental difference of being into a spatial environment where you can move around in space and you can see things in space, is a huge agent of change. It's one of the biggest gaps I think we've ever seen, which means that the learning and the change and the missteps we make will be bigger. We're going to fall into bigger holes because we don't quite know how to get there yet. But when we do get there, and I'm seeing tastes of how we do get there. Our Martian VR project is a good example of that because it has been so successful at CES, showing it off to a lot of people, and then at Sundance, showing it off to a lot of people. We see their reactions. We get that they want to be involved in it. They want to know when they can get more. There's a desire and appeal to it that is, it's almost stunning in a way when we know how early we are into it. So a lot of it's a pacing game, a lot of it's a figuring it out game. But that's what exploration is all about. That's what I've always liked to do and had great luck being involved in the right things at the right time. So I feel like I just happen to drop into another really good space right now. Well, we know why it's working so well now after we've built it. We didn't quite know as we were building the experience why it worked so well. But we know that putting people into a place where it's hard, aka impossible to get to, like Mars, and putting them into perilous situations where they have to make real choices. And these choices aren't game-oriented choices, they're like real life choices. So you are now the part of the astronaut, and you are thinking about all the things you have to do to potentially get off the planet, which is the narrative of the book and the movie, the Ridley Scott movie. So having the right craftsman to figure that arc out and make an interactive experience that takes story to a whole new level was the art and the science and the technology of bringing a bunch of people in. What an advantage of a big movie studio, 20th Century Fox, has is we have the resources and we understand the craftsmanship and we understand how to build really good movies, so we have a pretty good chance at understanding how to build really good, what's the next, what we would call future movie experience, future entertainment experience. So we put the right people involved in it. Ridley Scott was deeply involved in the building of the project. Rob Stromberg, who's an Academy Award VFX guy, directed the project. We have our whole team at 20th Century Fox that are deeply embedded in the highest level of movie creation. The president of post-production, Ted Galliano, the president of home video, Mike Dunn, the senior VP of production at Searchlight, David Greenbaum. And the list goes on and on and on. And it matters that you have people that have a real finely tuned sensibility of what makes it great, like what makes these things great. And they all have a lot that they're sitting on. They were all riding on the shoulders of giants. They made movies like Life of Pi and Avatar and The Wild last year and the list, and The Martian this year with Ridley. The list goes on and on and on. So when you put that level of talent in a room together and you start swirling around the chemistry, something magical happens, and it has to be shepherded right, and it has to be delivered right. But when it all comes together and you put people into the experience and they walk away going, wow, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen, I can't wait to do something like this in my career. And we've had, I could give you a laundry list of every A-level director on the planet that has come to our Fox Innovation Lab and seen what we're doing, and to a man, to a woman, they're all like, wow, how did this just happen to me? Like, you just took me on this journey over the last 30 minutes. And most of them don't even realize how long they were in it. They're like, well, how long was I in it? Like 10 minutes or so? It's like, no, you were in there for almost 30 minutes. What? Because you do all these crazy interactive things and you're experiencing things in a totally different way than just sitting back and watching a movie. But it's still entertaining in that story arc system because we built a story arc from Andy's terrific book. And that's where it all locks in. Technology is a tool to further our journey, right? And if technology outpaces or misses the mark within how you create story with technology, that's where things start to break down. When you have just spectacle, which is technology oriented, and you don't have something engaging that makes the spectacle worth spectating, that's where the breakdown happens. So a lot of my goal these days is actually trying to ride the carousel, right? And actually put everybody on the horses in the right spot so that we're all riding together and it's all in sync, and the story creation and the talent that does that and the technology creation and the talent that does that are in alignment. And they don't need to be in perfect sync, but they can't be misaligned or else you have trouble. Yeah, it comes down to craftsmanship in terms of the visual storytelling and all the tools that you use to do that. So we use the Unreal game engine as our primary interactive tool, and then we actually have clips of the movie that actually float in space that sort of are the connective tissue between the scenes. So there's some sort of sense of the past and the future, so your brain doesn't get totally lost. We're actually kind of connecting the worlds. So that's the visual side. And then on the audio side, it's a very finely tuned spatial audio system. We worked with a team called Q Department in New York that actually specializes in specialized audio, typically for games, where it all has to happen in real time. It all has to be triggered and fired based on how you look and what you touch and how you interact. And that's a level of craftsmanship that has to be brought in. So it's really all, you try and put the best people to work on the project, and then you hope for the best. And you're rigging the deck a little bit, because if you get the right people, your deck is really strong. And then you have to just make sure you get there at the end of the day. There's a ton of people that are touching all kinds of different ways to explore new worlds, new stories, new interactivity. It's just, you can't get away from the word new. It's just everything is new and shiny and interesting and experimental and exploratory, and it gives us a pretty good sense of how powerful what we're on to could be.